Books are the only real physical asset I have. I'm being totally serious. I'm 40 years old, didn't really manage to accumulate any wealth such as real estate, stocks, savings, money. The only actual property I own, amongst small bits and pieces, are books. Shelves upon shelves. The situation is so bad that I had to store some of them in boxes at my mom's place. I started reading books at a very young age. My mom always talks in a flaunty way about how young I was when I learned how to read, so that every Friday I would read aloud books to the other kids in my kindergarten. And while I have no way to confirm it, I do have a natural tendency and attraction towards the written or spoken word. Language is a sort of sorcery, but maybe I'll get into it in later videos. I think it will be fair to say I read mountains of books, cover to cover. Some left a deep imprint, some I only read because others said they're amazing, and some were declared as classics. And to be honest, for me, the vast majority of the classics seemed so utterly boring. Not all are bad, of course, but I never reacted to these books as I thought I would, with an utmost admiration of being left stunned due to the author's ability to bring into words his or her, but mostly his unique inner world, or to create a five-dimensional character that mirrors our very own experiences navigating through the chaos called life. At a later stage in life, while I was, as they call it, building a character, I started reading non-fictional books. It's just that I felt that after a while, fiction kind of fulfilled its quota, and there's no way I could extract any more joy or meaning from it. It could have been Murakami describing a person slicing a cucumber over 6 pages, or Dostoevsky rumbling over his character's inner conflict, tossing and turning in his sleep in an old Soviet language that probably lost its essence in translation. They all described the rooms of the house, but nobody managed to explain the architecture, if that makes sense. And frankly, they're not to be blamed. They were fictional writers. And although every author brings his soul into his creation, they wrote stories while I was interested in something else. My first non-fictional books were self-help books. God, I hate this category these days, but as someone in the midst of his spiritual quest back then, I grabbed everything I could carry home, be it the Dalai Lama and Eckhart Tolle and Deepak Chopra and Robin Sharma and Joe Dispenza. Later on, I got involved with the least known ones as well. I stayed up at night, leaning over my books and taking notes frantically and signing contracts with myself that from now on, I'm gonna do and act exactly as the masters of wisdom said, and I'll be able to shed more light into the darkest corners of my existence. But it didn't happen. I only became more frustrated and had much more questions than before. I also found so many logical fallacies in those writings, but I was asked to leave logic aside or fully experience it in order for it to be manifested in my life. This feeling even intensified when I was researching the isms, Buddhism and Judaism and Jainism and Christianity, which is a sort of an ism, if you would. And although I wasn't that naive to think that after reading these books, I'm going to actualize the human experience and come closer to the reason I was assembled into this specific form and shape using my particular but not so particular molecules, none of these books cracked the code to whatever mental safe I was trying to open. And while discussing this with people, I've been told that I'm expecting too much and life is a mystery we will never be able to comprehend due to its complexity, and that I should get laid more often. I agreed with them, and yet I didn't have expectations of epiphany, but I was sure someone has better things to say than scratching the surface, and I wasn't wrong. Later in life, I realized nobody holds the ultimate map, but this map is more of a puzzle. The only thing is that nobody tells you how many pieces this puzzle is made of, and worst, where to find those pieces. You're gonna have to go through this huge puzzle shop where a pile of puzzle pieces from different sets are blocking the aisles and find the pieces. But thank God for the internet and cheap flights and late night conversation in the footsteps of the Himalayas or the Table Mountains. They say things finds you when it's time, when you're ready, or in a crossroad where your prayers and begging collides with circumstances and faith and coincidence. And that's where I met the once in a lifetime masterpiece. And trust me when I say I don't use superlative that easy. The book Why Psychotherapy Won't Help You by Marina Karlova. Now, a full disclosure, I was first got familiar with the author through her YouTube channel, which is an endless source of sincere, well pondered upon, and painstakingly formed insights by itself. But being the greedy person I am, those fragments of ideas and theories weren't suffice. And I was quite jolly to realize later on that Marina wrote 2 books. But I'm getting slightly ahead of myself here. Before the books, I was watching a video called Why Psychotherapy Won't Help You and Never Will. Just the name of the video was so out of the usual wake up at 5 a.m. / try harder / meet your traumas / face your fear. You know the rest. And out of the bleak, mundane, and repetitive feed of mine emerged this genuine human who challenged everything. And I mean everything that me and probably 100% minus 20 people, give or take, believe to be true. Now, I don't want to spoil everything Marina says, mostly because I'd be so happy if those who watch this video will actually go and check her channel themselves. What I would like to discuss, or at least try to explain, is when and how we know someone might be onto something. And that's the feeling I had when I read Marina's work. First of all, one of the author's most prominent talent is her ability to use words. Now, I don't mean the way she talks or writes. I mean literally the extraordinary technique of welding one word to its following to create sentence that creates paragraphs that turn into pages of meaning. I'm serious. Pages of meaning. I have to quote Marina before we dive deeper. The book is probably not referring to people who dealt or dealing with immediate traumas that are really indisputable, such as shell shock, sexual assault, or terror attacks. I think she mostly talks about widespread phenomena like CPTSD, anxieties of a sort, relationship complexities, etc., where interpretation varies immensely. So at the core of Marina's idea, and please forgive me if I won't be able to cover it all, because to be honest, I'm not even sure I figured it all out myself yet, lies very logical assumptions. For instance, how come psychologists and perhaps psychiatrists as well holds probably the only occupation that you go in, pay a fortune to get treated, but the thing is that you never really get treated. Psychologists never guarantee a patient that they'll get rid of the trauma, that them parting ways with their suffocating anxiety is a matter of 5 to 6 meetings, and usually tied to the entangled nature of psychology, a refutable claim, according to her at least. So imagine you actually pay the plumber his fee for maybe fixing your leaky faucet. Sounds quite unacceptable, isn't it? I think there is a parallel in modern medicine as well, where you get treatments that may or may not work, or just to serve as a band-aid on your symptoms, but that's a whole different thing again. The other thing is the way psychologists are being glorified. Some chosen ones who went to school for 3 or 4 or 5 years, now holding the ultimate map to your very unique problems, which kind of stands in contradiction to the assumption each of us is a unique being with a disposable existence that is impossible to recreate. This thing by itself affects the entire dynamic when sitting in front of the therapist. In a subliminal way, the patient assuming he is about to hear words of living God, especially if it's his first attempt with therapy. So now you, the broken human with an issue, sit or lie on a sofa waiting for the giant to provide his interpretation of your situation in return of your hard dollars. then when you realize it doesn't really work, the high expectation you held prior to it are being shattered even harder. As they say in English, high expectations leads to great disappointments. Now, before moving forward, this is by no means an attempt to trash psychologists, the actual humans who do the work, but just a new prism to observe psychology through. My younger brother is a clinical psychologist to be, and I was always a bit weirded by the thought of trying to explain these books to him. So maybe this video is, in a way, a mitigation of this book and its ideas to him. Plus, remember, fellows, every idea should be challenged, especially if one considers himself as a truth seeker. Other than that, and as I mentioned earlier, Marina doubting the widely acceptable idea that each and every one of us being a unique being with customized mental issues that were tailor-made for us, designed by our circumstances in life. To the best of my understanding, it is not that she don't believe that each of us hold the potential or the capacity for individuation, Jung's word, not mine, but she asks, how come we praised, especially by motivational speakers and self-proclaimed gurus, as unique individuals, yet there's one or several therapists who can treat a plethora of humans, regardless their personal history? You can say it is a rough generalization, and of course there are different kind of therapists to every bundle of issues. God, I hate this word. I know. And yet, isn't that slightly weird? Also, what matters here is the end goal, which was reduced to a relief, but never a solution, blaming life's complexity and the unfathomable human psyche. Now, here's where it gets extremely interesting, in my opinion. There's another book by Marina Karlova called Cordyceps, the neural network that controls you, which is essential in order to get even a better understanding of the former concepts, but I would probably need a series of video to convey its gist. I'll explain it briefly. Why Cordyceps? Well, some of us probably watched the series The Last of Us, or maybe came across the video where this parasitic fungi infecting an ant, forcing it to climb a plant, clump onto it, then die as the fungus grows out of its body to release spores. Maybe some of the viewers can see where I'm going with it. In that book, Marina explains the societal and historical reasons we behave the way we do. And as a byproduct, to put all our trust in psychology, but not only, in order to cure our mental ailments. I promise I'll make another video on that book as well. So, as it is with many such complex issues, one of the ways to make things more comprehensible and bring one closer to understanding is to grasp what something is not, by way of negation, if you would. And that's what I think Marina is doing in her books and her videos. First, understand what might not be true, and of this large pool of belief and ideologies we all hold as a society when it comes to the function of psychology in our lives. By isolating some of the building blocks of what we hold as true, to see if they survive the scrutiny. And the reason I hold fond of this book is that so many, if not all, my core beliefs doesn't hold the scrutiny. Marina also uses the term programming, which is probably quite widespread these days in terms of learned behavioral patterns that were forced upon us, and using terms like system to represent societal shareholders that are the sole beneficiaries of such deep and entwined patterns. I might be drifting slightly to the second book here, but she claims it is possible to pinpoint where it all started, when was morality born, and what were the processes that gave birth to the hierarchical based societies. Some happen quite naturally and not in a malicious let's control human mind way that led to this cordyceps like infestation on our mind. Marina analyzes many important philosophers' works such as Nietzsche, Baudrillard, Foucault, Machiavelli, and many more, debunking or at least doubting much of their work and demonstrating their contribution to the way our consciousness ended up the way it did. One can definitely conclude that the writer did her own soul searching and not skimmed through selected quotes of the above mentioned names, but read it, chew it, and spit it over and over and over. She dissects the whole happiness concepts and why it should be the last thing humans should aspire for, being the most unachievable thing for humans, let alone for long periods or forever. A claim that I strongly side with way before I read this book. My favorite part is how she cleared this vast landmine of adhering to society and its norms, naming society as a trap. I know, maybe to some of you it might appear as tinfoil hat, conspiracy theory, new age productivity guru, or motivational speaker's jargon, but it is far from it. You'll have to trust me on this one. All of these 40 seconds TikTok personas combined won't get closer to this careful yet brutal and honest mess. It will be fair to say that even throughout her videos, Marina emphasizes that the current situation of the world in general and human consciousness in particular isn't a byproduct of a secret cabal, Freemason secret societies, or lizard people meeting in an oval room far away in a tax shelter. It is more of micro processes, intentional of course, that got into unstoppable inertia by people with similar mindset over time, and now we're all here. My favorite part my favorite part is the inclusion of personal diary parts at the end of each chapter, usually the author's insights and thoughts regarding more or less to the part that was just concluded. I think that when discussing such topics, relatability is very important, and this attempt to create an intimacy with the reader just makes the ideas penetrate even deeper. And although this technique is not new, it adds a layer of empathy. I found myself in many of these journal snippets. So, in a way, this book falls under the category I just made up called easy reading on a not so easy topic. Although you gotta be an English speaker to an extent and be familiar with some of the ideas, it is still readable, and what you don't get, well, you know how to learn about things you don't know these days, right? I recommend the book for people who are interested in the far edge of any standard theory or mass about psychology and psychotherapy, with the ability to bring it much more closer than you can imagine. I had so many aha moments where I literally had to pause and go lie down to internalize what I read. And the thing is, or at least this is how I felt, she doesn't say anything new to people who spend some time trying to make sense of it all. She just awakened this dormant part of our being that was marginalized or pushed into the blind spot of our mind periphery. She doesn't offer a lengthy cure to your anxieties and traumas because maybe there is no need of such. The book really shuffles the card of standard mental issues, prolonged conversation about nothing, mild band-aid on your aching soul that is not holding much water in the long run formula. I'll add links in the bio for the book. Needless to say, I don't know Marina personally, nor I'm benefiting from it in any way besides the mental aspect of her work. So thank you very much for watching, and you're more than welcome to like or to comment, and see you in the next video. Bye.